Welcome to Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. I'm with the one and only George Conscious Lee, talking about Black history, talking about due process of law, and all the things. George, thanks for giving us some of your time today.
Hey, thank you for having me on today.
We've already got 2,000 people watching, which is exciting because I think people want to hear exactly what's happening. I want to start with the top of the story. There's a lot we want to cover today. The Fifth Circuit in Texas just ruled that Trump can keep undocumented immigrants in indefinite detention without due process. And we were talking offline about the impact this has not only contemporarily, but how we saw this coming. And you were sharing how you were debating this more than a decade ago under the Obama administration on the dangers of this kind of a presidential power. Talk about that.
Man, shout out to everybody watching right now. I used to be a college policy debater. And in the college policy debate, we had a topic that changed every year. My senior year, the college topic was the United States federal government shall substantially decrease presidential war powers in indefinite detention, targeted killing, introducing hostility in the arms, cyber attacks, and there's one more topic area I can't remember. I never thought in 2014 that I would be able to use so much specific topic education that I learned in policy debate to apply to real geopolitics that's going on right now. What I would say is that when it comes to the Constitution and us thinking about all of the tools of democracy, it's also important for us to think about the most nefarious, bad faith intentions to circumvent the law to be able to push things that's unconstitutional and I would argue undemocratic,
That's
like
right.
indefinite detention with no due process. And it's just understanding this, what I learned in debate is that once we start to expand the presidential war powers, it literally starts to obscure how we're able to hold in check the
That's right.
power of the president, the executive power writ large.
And that's exactly right. And this is why there needs to be consistency because you make one exception, you've made every exception. And when this is one of the most common things we're hearing from MAGAs right now that, well, where were you when Obama was doing this? Well, first of all, Obama didn't do it to this extreme. But second of all, when
We
he
did.
towed the line, we let him know. We called him out on it. When he used a drone strike to kill a US citizen, we called him out on it. When Biden suspended asylum, we called him out on it. We weren't silent on these things. And so if you're saying, where were you then? Well, what you're confessing to is that you were ignorant then, and now you're supporting a fascist policy now. This is not a win. This is not a flex for you. So right now in Texas, they are building mass detention facilities in El Paso, for example, to hold 8,500 people, spending $172 million of taxpayer money, all while we have a housing crisis, by the way. They're spending it on this. And I don't know if you saw this report that just came out a couple days ago. Guardian is reporting that the people that are detaining in these facilities are suffering not just physical abuse, but also sexual abuse. We have at least a half dozen or more confirmed accounts of inmates saying that they had in the prison guards, the ICE prison guards, grabbed and crushed their testicles by hand. Now, I want to sit on that for just a second because that's horrifying. And I would go a step further, and I've got an article coming out about this later today, that one of the provisions of the Genocide Convention, one definition of genocide, is to use force to stop people from having the ability to reproduce. Given this nation's history and tying this into Black history and into the sexual violence of the Black Americans endured under enslavement and Jim Crow, what connections do you see from the past to the present? Because I'm tired of people saying this is unprecedented. It's not.
Uh, I, a lot of American exceptionalism is being exposed on behalf of a lot of the ways that we are relating and we're having outrage about what's going on. To me, as somebody that has a degree in African American studies, I think it's important that we do not transcribe American unique violence or American structural violence onto foreign entities, especially when it's been mastered and manufactured here. I think specifically of the fugitive slave era and
Mm,
how we were able to have the Supreme Court I would say, promote laws to justify things that I think that the founding fathers would say is unconstitutional. So being able to racially profile individuals and be able to assume a legal status based off of their race. I like to, as an old professor, I like to think about like movies and how I used to be able to contextualize history by using movies. And I think 12 Years a Slave is a great movie for us to think about how Solomon was a free man up north and how his skin color got used against him to make it where he was seen as being always already property of the plantation. So now we have all these different American citizens that maybe they have an accent, maybe have brown skin, maybe they're Haitian or Latino. Now they're always being seen in proximity to being undocumented or being illegal in presence. And now it's justifying what's happening here. The
Mm.
reason why I'm using 12 years a slave also is because the way that we view Texas specifically has always had historical ties to how we're able to take individuals, kidnap them, and then able to monetize that here in the state of Texas. From Jim Crow time to fugitive slave era, the state that I live in, that I'm born and raised in, has always had its unique ways of being able to commodify legal violence at the expense of people of color to enrich rich white men here. And it's just like, that's something to think about. The last thing I'll say this, maybe you do want to engage in American exceptionalism. Maybe you do understand that Germany always had its concentration camps not set in Germany. If you think that, and you only can think about that paradigm, Texas is now being set up like Poland, and up north is now almost being set up like ground zero to blue states. So every time they capture somebody, they send them to a concentration camp in my state that takes my taxpayers' dollars to build the concentration camps.
That's a really painful reality to think about because there's a map out there right now of where ICE is being deployed, and it's basically all blue states, wherever they're targeting people, raiding homes, raiding businesses, and then they're transporting them away thousands of miles away. We saw them do this with Liam, the beautiful 4-year-old child. They're transporting them thousands of miles away to make it even more difficult for them to get basic due process or basic accountability. It's family separation through and through. Do you see parallels between the model of enslavement used in the United States and the contemporary model of prison slavery, where now these allegedly undocumented immigrants are being thrown into these private prisons that are being built to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars? Because that money, by the way, is going to private contractors. And I would venture to guess the vast majority of them are already wealthy white males. Do you see parallels between the history and the contemporary reality?
For sure, for sure. I think the language of the 13th Amendment is something that we have to always remind ourselves, especially when you want to get lost in the sauce of what has happened recently.
Yeah.
The 13th Amendment has always made that exception, except for punishment, conviction of law. We think slavery is bad, except if we can
Yep.
punish and convict you of a law. So when we start thinking about how Supreme Court has made it justifiable to racially profile in different people, and we see that a lot of these individuals that are being racially profiled, that are being now justifiably put in indefinite detention, we see that not only are they not getting due process, we see how skin color uniquely is being put in it, but also that precedent within the law is just making it where we're expanding labor. We're expanding the labor force, and we're expanding how we can how we can justify, and I would say manufacture public's consent to be able to be like, yeah, prison equals bad people. Bad people, Mika, we can do whatever we want to do with them. So who cares if this, that, and the other? There's something else that I think I wanted to add into the sexual violence part of what is happening in ICE. I also read in the report that there was an ICE agent that was having transactional sexual assaults with a woman to give them permission to be able to see her child.
In Louisiana, yeah.
Louisiana. So just simplifying that. For this woman to see their child, this ICE agent would allow it insofar that he could sexually assault her. So we have all these different instances where we have the proclivity of sexual assault, which is also very, prevalent on the plantation and then Jim Crow, and also different ways that different slave catchers, different overseers, different farmers were able to talk about, hey, this a black woman. Legally, she's seen as an nympho.
Hmm.
There's no way for me to be able to rape this black woman. She wanted it. So when we start thinking about how that same sexual pathology is being placed on these women, because y'all know in America, we always already felt like Latino women are hypersexual and have all these babies. So now we see how this is also feeding into the monster of the policing apparatus of ICE. And it's one of the things, too, that I think is important for us to always point out. The shit didn't start happening right now.
No. No. The story you're talking about, this horrifying story, is in Louisiana, where this ICE agent raped a woman for months on end.
Months.
And he's facing, I think, only a maximum of 10 or 15 years in prison if he gets convicted. And, the question that I always think about is who else knew for those months and months and said nothing and did nothing? And who else also engaged in this horrific rape without facing any kind of accountability whatsoever. And if there's one thing we've learned in these last several months with these release of these Epstein files, is that this goes much further than any one of us could have thought. There really,
Nah,
literally, is a billionaire-run child sex trafficking pedophilia ring that is
it
facing no
is.
accountability whatsoever. So, with all that in mind,
Hold on, real fast, real fast,
yeah,
real fast, real fast, real fast,
yeah,
real fast. It's just pointing this out to everybody. I think this is what I'm gonna call a conservative contradiction. The same people that are justifying extrajudicial violence on people in the name of the law because their presence is illegal, is criminal, even though it's a civil offense, are also turning a blind eye and saying that we don't need no legal response to the Epstein files. The
yeah,
same party also that passed a whole bunch of different laws saying we got to protect the children from the drag queens, protect children from all of the feminism, and protect them from the CRT. There was potential violence, potential threats. They now protecting real pedophiles. So just when we think about the Epstein files and relationship, the internal link between the Epstein files and ICE, hey, it's showing the law only matter to people it think it should matter to, and it should never matter to people that think it don't matter to.
that's right. Yeah, it's what Paul Mooney said, the complexion for protection. When an undocumented immigrant killed Laken Riley, to this day, you can't be on an online forum without Laken Riley being mentioned. They literally changed the law to deny due process to undocumented immigrants because of what this undocumented immigrant did, this horrific crime he committed to Laken Riley. No one's defending the horrific crime. We are defending the Constitution. And the reason why I bring that up is because I don't know if you saw this report. It's now being publicized because the UK is finally investigating it. But a white MAGA man named Chris Harrison killed his own daughter, shot her dead after she criticized Trump. And would you believe, George Conscious Lee, that a grand jury in Texas refused to indict him? He killed his daughter and now he's walking free. No accountability whatsoever. So, an undocumented immigrant kills Laken Riley, and every undocumented person in the country now, every immigrant in the person now has to suffer the consequences of one man's horrific crimes. But in MAGA, Texas, a white MAGA father kills his daughter
Own
for
daughter.
criticizing Trump, shoots her dead, like in their own home, shoots her dead, and is walking free and talking about how Jesus forgives. To me, this is an insult to Christianity, but this is Christian nationalism. And this is why I want to go back to the conversation about ICE. When we talk about the extent of the child sexual abuse, of the rape, of these, denial of due process, of ignoring judicial warrants, of killing people in broad daylight. Keith Porter and Renee Good and Alex Purdy, the list goes on and on. Can this be reformed, or is abolishment the only logical path forward?
I think that abolishment is the only way. It's the only path forward. And I think the more we can get into specific like Black history and learn about how we've engaged law. Yesterday, shout out to my boy Davon Love of Leads a Beautiful Struggle, Baltimore. He was teaching me about there was an anti-lynching bill that the UNIA and the NAACP was trying to build. The UNIA was an organization that was much
Yep.
more Black nationalist, and the NAACP is much more about, civil engagement, much more about liberal democracy.
Yep.
They were about to collab on a particular bill about the anti-lynching, and they had this conflict. And what ended up happening is the NAACP was going to be like, man, we should take this bill, even though there's going to be no criminal consequences for lynching because something is better than nothing. The UNA was like, nah, we don't walk away because they're going to do nothing at all. Now, not only did they not end up getting the bill, it made it where we were able to always get these incremental progress symbols.
Yeah.
And those incremental progress symbols was seen as a justification for the always already reform that made it where it is not debatable, unnegotiable to think about the redeemability of what we're dealing with. And I just think about it like this. When America starts to engage in American imperialism and starts to justify invasions or justify the overthrowing of a government, how much do they tell us for us to justify and think that what they have there is irredeemable? When they told us about Libya and Gaddafi, when they telling us about Maduro and Venezuela, how much did they tell us for us to believe that it was irredeemable? For
That's
me,
right.
now thinking about what that means now for us, to me,
That's a
the
great
American
point.
exceptionalism to me makes it that we believe that the Europeans in Greece in 400 D80 or whatever it is, it's like, hey, they came up with the highest form of government that human history and human innovation can come with. And we're limited now to what democracy idealistically. We can't deal with the material reality of democracy because then you only demonizing it by what it can. You know what I'm saying? To me, I would argue to simplify. This shit is not redeemable.
That's
House is
that's such an
burned.
That's such an important point. I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, we think about the invasion of Iraq. We think about the invasion of Afghanistan. To think about the taking out of Gaddafi, of taking out of Maduro, of the taking out of Pinochet. I mean, so many examples of the U.S. government saying, "Hey, we had to overthrow this horrible dictator.
Thomas Sankara, you feel me?
We yeah,
What? He
we
like
couldn't have
what?
waited. These people are suffering. What are you crazy? You want us to leave them to Gaddafi or to Saddam? These
Gaddafi is
horrible
killing his
people."
people in the street.
That's right. And then
Saddam
meanwhile,
Hussein is indefinitely detaining his people that dissent him.
that's right. That's right. And then meanwhile, we talk about the injustices here and it's incremental. It's a step-by-step process. We can't even get basic healthcare in this country because it's got to be incremental and step by step. And so there is this hypocrisy here. And I'm not saying we overthrow the US government. I am saying if you're going to have the energy to say we need a quick resolution in Venezuela, let's get a quick resolution here as well. Because I'll tell you what, 70,000 people a year are dying due to lack of healthcare. Why do we still have an insurance system that is denying people basic healthcare access and killing 70,000 people a year? If some company was selling shards of broken glass to babies and killing 70,000 babies a year, would we allow that company to function? Why is this happening? So I think that urgency of now absolutely needs to happen. Um, I'm reading the comments here. People are pretty excited and engaged here. George, let's talk about your platform. Research over research, education is elevation, especially this Black history. You educated me on this that Black men comprise 1.5% of educators in this country. And I'll give you my example. I had my kindergarten teacher was a Black woman named Miss Wood. Shout out to her. And I did not have another Black teacher, believe it or not, until I got to law school. I went from kindergarten, first grade through senior year of high school, went through 4 years of college. It wasn't until law school that I had another Black teacher, and I had my first Black male teacher, Professor Jonathan Stubbs, brilliant legal scholar at the University of Richmond Law. I love this man to death. He is just the heart and soul of everything that it means to be American. And what I learned from him was I felt I felt like I was missing out. Now I want to be clear, at the mosque, I had plenty of Black aunties and uncles teach me, so that's why
So
I didn't feel deprived at all. I was very
and he took
fortunate,
me
but
to
I'm
the mosque, y'all, and man,
right? You
it
saw it.
was it was an experience that definitely like I've been reflecting on for sure, for sure. Like, man, this is something different for me coming from my Southern Baptist background,
Well,
Southern Missionary Methodist background. It was crazy. Like, shout out
you're
to y'all
welcome
that be in the
anytime.
mosque, man.
Yeah,
It
you're
seemed
welcome.
like it was
You're welcome anytime. Everyone's welcome at all times. They keep saying MAGAs keep saying like, "What's going on in these mosques?" I'm like, "Come on in. Like, you ain't gotta hide. Like, come on in. We're not hiding anything. Come on." But I wanted to bring it back to you and talk about, Black educators. Black men are 1.5% of educators in this country, vastly underrepresented. And now you're facing a situation. You've built a massive online platform, but with algorithmic changes like a TikTok, your account is basically gutted. It's about to be suspended. And one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is for everyone watching to know that you need to subscribe to George Lee because of his work and because of his advocacy. I'm going to put the link in the chat, so make sure you click subscribe. But can you talk a little bit about the importance of representation of Black men in education and why the lack of that representation is actually harming not just Black kids, but all kids, all people in this country?
yeah. I want to start with the unique advantage that the studies show that all students benefit when we have Black men in the classroom. All students benefit when we have Black men in the classroom. Um, when I was in grad school getting that master's degree in adult and higher education, what I learned about is the different ways internally and externally that Black people get pushed out of the classroom, and how Black men uniquely always start to deal with that monstrosity of how our bodies are positioned within the classroom. A lot of Black men's first introduction to the prison industrial complex is a lot of time through their school to prison pipeline. And a lot of the ways that Black boys are seen in the classroom, if we cannot be seen as a athlete that is gifted, a lot of times we're put in those very criminalistic boxes. So when we
Mm,
think about how that matriculates up to how Black men start to see themselves as being educators, we see that's the reason why we have less than 2% of public educators being Black men. Another thing that I think is important right now is that when we see the stripping of Black education from a policy level and from a funding level, to me, I think it starts to highlight the importance of the work that I'm doing, but also the importance of the presence of having Black men within education, and also the reason why we got to really pour into the independent educators. Because one of the reasons why I talked about living in Texas, being in the classroom and talking about equity, talking about privilege, even engaging in about the concepts about DEI, without even getting into leftist ideas about anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism, that very those very lessons are criminalized.
Yeah.
When I was a professor at the
Right.
University of Oklahoma, one of the reasons why I got pushed out of the classroom and more online full time is because of all the policies that was passed in the state of Oklahoma that made it where the literal knowledge that I learned from my graduate degrees from the state of Oklahoma became criminalized. So I'm thinking about now all of the various other Black educators that also always being seen as losing their job and always trying to figure out how can I use all this amazing knowledge that I learned that is now criminalized for me to kind of give out. And I think that's one of the things we get in. It's also one of the reasons why I started this petition to demand that we have inclusive education, Black education nationwide, that is not just within this, you know what I'm saying, 28 days. The last thing I say is this, is that the net benefit of learning about education, specifically Black history, but not just Black history, Black educators, is to make it where you don't believe we're living in unprecedented times. See what
Right.
I did there? Taking it back to the top of what we talked about.
That's right.
When you believe it is unprecedented times, a lot of times that's just illustrating your ignorance to Black history and your ignorance to what Indigenous Americans have experienced. And that's the reason why you feel like this is the America you're not used to. When you come and
Right.
follow me over here, I will always sprinkle you on how what is happening right now. I can tie direct dots from what has happened. And it'll
100%.
force you to see that mirror of America, to see how a lot of us have always already viewed America. And it's just like in the most respectful, not I got you way. Welcome to the club.
Yep.
Come over
Very,
here and
very well said. Very well said. Anytime
learn.
I hear somebody say, I don't recognize this country anymore, it tells me that they haven't been paying attention for the last, I don't know how many years, because this is unfortunately the way it's always been for a lot of people. Before we go, George, I want to, and I put it in the chat group, you have been nominated for an NAACP Image Award. I just put the link in the chat group. Everyone, we got 3,500 people watching this. Everybody go and vote for George, and please
Please
vote for
do.
him. He's the man who's doing the work. Can you talk a little bit about this award, what it means, and why people should just be involved in these kinds of awards in general?
Yeah, shout out to the NAACP National Advancement for Color People. It is I feel like an institution that is very historical, has a great legacy within the Black community, within Black history. This is my second time being nominated for a NAACP Content Creator Entertainer of the Year category for politics culture. And this time I'm looking to win. If you were, felt moved, captivated, impact, or you wanted to ask any questions from this, I also encourage you to help a brother out and help me get this award. I'm nominated alongside of a bunch of amazing people,
Yeah.
all of my friends. So it's a nice little friendly competition that we have. Definitely would encourage y'all to please go and give me a vote. You can vote every day, actually, until the 13th, until Friday. So you can vote for me today, Thursday, and on Friday. And if you got like an email from your work and a personal email and an email from a business, go on and give me all three votes from all three different emails. Education is elevation. And I appreciate y'all. And too, for people that's looking to talk more, on Wednesday mornings, I always go live 10:30-ish a.m. So I'm about to get off of this and I'll go back live again. So, if you're not doing nothing and you want to come chop it up and talk to me, come on over. Come
George,
on over.
beautiful. And then very last thing before we go, you've got a growing Substack platform. Just in 30 seconds, what's your platform about, and what will folks get once they subscribe to you on Substack as well?
Yeah, my motto is education is elevation. And instead of, kind of being, instead of thinking very deeply about some shallow shit, you can come over here and be empowered, inspired through a pedagogical lens. When you follow over here at Research Over Me Search, I will always be provocative and give you access to a type of thinking as well as a knowledge that you wish you should have had access with K through 12. And if you was into college, you'll feel like, why didn't you teach me this in college? That's the reason why we have platforms like mine to give you that information that the state, that the empire seen as being a challenge to its very existence. Education is elevation. Research over me search. I got some really in store, good for y'all. Come holler at me.
George, consciously, always a pleasure to have this conversation. A blessed and thoughtful Black History Month to you and to all those watching. Make sure you subscribe to George. Make sure you stay engaged in this content. You're watching Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. We'll be back soon. Peace out.